Pag-usapan naman natin yung environmental awareness. So, according to Frontiers 2018, Emerging Issues of Environmental Concern or UN Environment 2019, there is an alarming concern with respect to balancing the need for advancement and environmental preservation. Here are some parts of the report. Large-scale industrialization has resulted in widespread fragmentation of previously intact landscapes around the globe. From the clearance of richly populated rainforests to the damming of mighty arterial rivers, the knock-on effect of isolated, impact ecosystem is detrimental to the health of flora and fauna alike, and in severe cases, threatens species extinction. Landscapes are also not limited to the terrestrial realm, as ecosystem connectivity extends beyond continental shores into marine seascapes and the oceans. Initiatives to promote landscape connectivity are offering hope in various global locations, but much more focus in planning to reconnect habitat patches or preserve existing connectivity is needed. This is vital preserving the remaining biodiversity and to protect the interlinked ecosystem on which we all depend. National efforts require expansion to the international level, as ecosystems are not bounded by country borders. From marine reserves, the wildlife corridors, and beyond, this wide-ranging chapter explores the issues of and solutions to fragmentation in the natural world and the imperative for joined-up thinking in planning for the preservation and conservation of biodiversity and species survival. With rising global temperatures, the Arctic is warming twice as fast as the global average, and scientists are becoming increasingly alarmed at accelerating rate of permafrost too. While research is ongoing, too little is currently known for all the intricate relationships and dynamics between the perennial frozen ground that is permafrost and the isolating layer of dead plant remains, or PET, that covers a significant percentage of the northernmost areas of our planet. Permafrost, though, that not only has direct impacts on the ecology and infrastructure of the peatland regions, it is also a potential typing element towards on a runaway greenhouse effect. Preservation of these rich soil carbon deposits is imperative to cushion the global effects of climate change and to avoid the worst effects and risks of unlocking these frozen assets, which keep carbon and other greenhouse gases sequestered underground and out of the atmosphere. Likely scenarios and the collaborative research urgently needed to ensure preservation of these crucial deposits are truly explored in this chapter. From the ground up, broadly speaking, evolution depends on the successful adaptation, and maladaptation results in failure. In terms of climate change, strategies for adaptation need to address vulnerabilities and increase resilience on a global scale, and avoid short term fixes that may only have local benefits. It is becoming clear that international cooperation and planning are needed to avoid adaptations that may appear to offer mitigation but which actually compound the problem. Philippines and the environment. As cited in the Philippines Climate Change Commission report, major institutions have provided their projections about the country's environmental condition, like major rainfall changes in patterns and distributions, threats to natural ecosystems, water scarcity, more public health emergencies, labor productivity declines, more women endangered and killed, dying corals, declining rice yields, more intense droughts, and higher sea level rise. Climate change. Climate change is a change in the statistical distribution of weather over periods of time that range from decades to millions of years. It can be a change in the average weather or a change in the distribution of weather events around an average. For example, greater or fewer extreme weather events. Climate change may be limited to a specific region or may occur across the whole Earth. What makes the climate change? The Earth's climate is influenced by many factors, mainly by the amount of energy coming from the sun, but also by factors such as the amount of greenhouse gases and aerosols in the atmosphere, and the properties of the Earth's surface, which determine how much of the solar energy is retained or reflected back to space. Causes of climate change. Natural causes. Continental drift. The continents that we are familiar with today were formed when the landmass began gradually drifting apart millions of years back. This drift also had an impact on the climate change because it changed the physical features of the landmass, their position, and the position of water bodies. The separation of the land masses changed the flow of ocean currents and winds, which affected the climate. Volcanoes. When a volcano erupts, it throws out large volumes of sulfur dioxide, water vapor, dust, and ash into the atmosphere. Although the volcanic activity may last only a few days, yet the large volumes of gases and ash can influence climatic patterns for years. Millions of tons of sulfur dioxide gas can reach the upper levels of the atmosphere, or called the stratosphere, from a major eruption. The gases and dust particles partially block the incoming rays of the sun, leading to cooling. Sulfur dioxide combines with water to form tiny droplets of sulfuric acid. These droplets are so small that many of them can stay aloft for several years. They are efficient reflectors of sunlight and screen the ground from some of the energy that it would ordinarily receive from the sun. Winds in the upper levels of the atmosphere, called the stratosphere, carry the aerosols rapidly around the globe in either an easterly or westerly direction. Movement of aerosols north and south is always much slower. The Earth's tilt. Changes in the tilt of the Earth can affect the severity of the seasons. More tilt means warmer summers and colder winters. Less tilt means cooler summers and milder winters. Ocean currents. The oceans are a major component of the climate system. They cover about 71% of the Earth and absorb about twice as much of the sun's radiation as the atmosphere or the land surface. Ocean currents move vast amounts of the heat across the planet, roughly the same amount as the atmosphere does, but the oceans are surrounded by land masses. So heat transport through the water is through channels. Winds push horizontally against the sea surface and drive ocean current patterns. Certain parts of the world are influenced by ocean currents more than others. Ocean currents have been known to change direction or slow down. Much of the heat that escapes from the oceans is in the form of water vapor, the most abundant greenhouse gas on Earth. Yet, water vapor also contributes to the formation of clouds, which shade the surface and have a net cooling effect. Human causes, greenhouse gases and their sources. Carbon dioxide, the most important greenhouse gas in the atmosphere. The changes in land use pattern, deforestation, land clearing, agriculture, and other activities have all led to a rise in the emission of carbon dioxide. Methane. About one-fourth of all methane emissions are said to come from domesticated animals such as dairy cows, goats, pigs, and horses. These animals produce methane during the code chewing process. Methane is also released from rice or paddy fields that are flooded during the sowing and maturing periods. When soil is covered with water, it becomes anaerobic or lacking in oxygen. Under such conditions, methane producing bacteria and other organisms decompose organic matter in the soil to form methane. Methane is also emitted from landfills and other waste dumps. If the waste is put into a incinerator or burnt in the open, carbon dioxide is emitted. Methane is also emitted during the process of oil drilling, coal mining, and also from leaking gas pipelines or due to accidents and poor maintenance of sites. Nitrous oxide. A large amount of nitrous oxide emission has been attributed to fertilizer application. This in turn depends on the type of fertilizer that is used, how and when it is used, and the methods of tilling that are followed. Nitrogen contributions are also made by leguminous plants, such as beans and pulses that add nitrogen to the soil. Human contribution to climate change. All of us in our daily lives contribute our bit to this change in the climate. Give these points a good serious thought. Electricity is the main source of power in urban areas. All our gadgets run on electricity generated mainly from the thermal power plants. These thermal power plants are run on fossil fuels, or mostly coal, and are responsible for the emission of huge amounts of greenhouse gases and other pollutants. Cars, buses, and trucks are the principal ways by which goods and people are transported in most of our cities. These are run mainly on petrol or diesel, both fossil fuels. We generate large quantities of waste in the form of plastics that remain in the environment for many years and cause damage. We use a huge quantity of paper in our work at schools and in office. Timber is used in a large quantities for construction of houses, which means that large areas of forest have to be cut down. A growing population has meant more and more mouths to feed. Because the land area available for agriculture is limited, and in fact is actually shrinking as a result of ecological degradation. High-yielding varieties of crop are being grown to increase the agriculture output from a given area of land. However, such high-yielding varieties of crops require large quantities of fertilizers, and more fertilizer means more emissions or nitrous oxide, both from the field into which it is put and to fertilizer industry that makes it. Pollution also results from the runoff of fertilizer into water bodies. What impacts of climate change have already been observed? Regional climate change is already affecting many natural systems. For instance, it is increasingly being observed that snow and ice are melting and frozen ground is thawing. Hydrological and biological systems are changing and in some cases being disrupted. Migrations are starting earlier, and species' geographic ranges are shifting towards the poles. Despite remaining gaps in knowledge, it is likely that these effects are linked to human influence on climate. At the regional level, however, responses to natural variability are difficult to separate from the effects of climate change. Some previously unanticipated impacts of regional climate change are just starting to become apparent. For instance, melting glaciers can threaten mountain settlements and water resources, and damage associated with coastal flooding are increasing. How do people adapt to climate change? Humans need to adapt to the impacts of climate change, for instance, through technological solutions such as coastal defenses and changes in consumption habits. Vulnerability of human populations to climate change and its consequences can be affected by other factors such as pollution, conflicts, or epidemics such as AIDS. An emphasis on sustainable development can help human societies reduce their vulnerability to climate change. Mitigation measures that aim to reduce greenhouse gases emissions can help avoid, reduce or delay impacts and should be implemented in order to ensure that adaptation capacity is not exceeded. NSTP and the environment. Executive Order Number 579 encouraging the formulation and implementation of Green Philippines programs through the National Service Training Program or NSTP. Section 1. The National Service Training Program or NSTP shall endeavor to build a new quality of life that will keep the nation young and beautiful. In order to ensure its realization, all students under NSTP Reserve Officers Training Corps or ROTC Literacy Training Services or LTS and Civic Welfare Training Service or CWATS shall be involved in Green Philippines activities which include, among others, taking back our forests and replenishing fallen trees with new protected forests, beautifying our barangays and cities, building more urban parks and recreation areas, purifying our water, cleaning up industrial sites. Section 2. At least 36 hours per semester or 72 hours in case of one summer program shall be dedicated for the implementation of the activities enumerated under Section 1 hereof. Republic Act Number 9512, National Environmental Awareness through Environmental Education and for other purposes. Section 2. Consistent with the policy of the state to protect and advance the right of the people to a balanced and healthful ecology in accord with the rhythm and harmony of nature, and in recognition of the vital role of the youth in nation building and the role of education to foster patriotism and nationalism, accelerate social progress and promote total human liberation and development. The state shall promote national awareness on the role of natural resources in economic growth and the importance of environmental conservation and ecological balance towards sustained national development. Section 3. Environmental education shall encompass environmental concepts and principles, environmental laws, the state of international and local environment, local environment best practices, the threats of environmental degradation and its impact on human well-being, the responsibility of the citizenry to the environment and the value of conservation, protection, and rehabilitation of natural resources and the environment in the context of sustainable development. It shall cover both theoretical and practical modules comprising activities, projects, programs including, but not limited to, tree planting, waste minimization, segregation, recycling and composting, freshwater and marine conservation, forest management and conservation, relevant livelihood opportunities and economic benefits, and other such programs and undertakings to aid the implementation of the different environmental protection law. Section 4. The CHED and the TESDA shall include environmental education and awareness programs and activities in the National Service Training Program under Republic Act Number 9163 as part of the Civic Welfare Training Service component required for all baccalaureate degree courses and vocational courses with a curriculum of at least two. So guys, eto nga natapos rin at na-discuss ko na rin sa inyo yung environmental awareness. At yung una, na-discuss ko rin ko sa inyo yung environmental protection. So, under the environmental protection, we have the 7 environmental principles and the individual initiative. So, guys, maraming salamat sa oras nyo at sana may natutunan kayo sa aking discussion and sana makatulong rin ito para maengganyo kayo na alagaan natin ng ating kalikasan, ang ating environment and para makapagbigay rin ito ng magandang pamumuhay para sa atin. At maraming salamat sa inyo, and please don't forget to subscribe and please follow me on YouTube, and maraming salamat sa inyo, and keep safe, be happy always, and thank you.